Good afternoon, hello and welcome to Module 6. I'm Andrew Vedmesh and this is about influencing decisions. Kepner-Tregoe started out in 1958 with an analysis of decision making in the US military. The finding was interesting that even in such a disciplined environment, leaders would make radically different decisions based on having exactly the same information. So that's kind of curious and perhaps not so desirable in a military context. More recently, Daniel Kahneman and others have shown that we're subject to many automated responses rooted in the way our brains work. So we have to be a little bit careful. Now, let's move forward. You probably already know that this is one of many modules, and we are now on Module 6. There are 2 modules focused on risks and opportunities next week. All the others are available as recordings if you want them. The most important thing about each one, from my point of view, is that you try the ideas out. And at the end, I'll make a suggestion about what you might do this time. Now, today's agenda. This is about influencing decisions. Too often we run scared of any suggestion of selling or influence, but we will often need to do this to avoid really inappropriate decisions being taken by colleagues or senior leaders. Look, we're all subject to different personal biases, and it's a really useful service to others to help them take a balanced view. So we'll look at risk assessment, we'll look at what we need to do to make a balanced decision, and we'll look at influencing others. Now, have you already made up your mind? Lots of decisions don't need a big analysis. Simple decisions where you're on familiar ground, you know what you're doing, you know that the option you're choosing works, or you have 3 options in front of you and they're all much of a muchness, just go for it, and that's fine. You need then to focus on implementation quality rather than the decision-making process itself. Decisions always exist when there's some uncertainty. We don't know which option will do best, or the benefits are not clear, or the risks of action or inaction are not particularly clear either. One of the mistakes that I see leaders making a lot is the one illustrated in this cartoon. Not really involving people in decisions. You know, if you want to involve people in decisions, you also have to be prepared to let go of a degree of power and let people do stuff that they think is appropriate, regardless of your opinion. You know, if they're going to be responsible for the implementation, then they ought to have a big say in the decision. Now, going back to Kahneman and the neuroscience for a moment. Decisions tend to be taken by all of us which reinforce our pre-existing views, and that might be okay sometimes. Staying as you are is often a good thing, particularly if that's a crocodile in the river rather than a log. But if you're going to stay as you are and maintain the status quo, that also needs a considered assessment just as much as the assessment of change that you're proposing to make. So sticking as you are should always be taken as a positive decision. Now, generally speaking, we will always have 3 options. We stay as we are, we make some modification to the way in which we do things now, or we make a complete change. That might be a new system, new process, complete new job, complete new life, whatever it is. But we have to just think about why we're feeling comfortable with staying with certain options and not others and bring that out. So let's have a look at what we can do about this in a positive way. First question that Katie focuses on is, what's the decision? It's a great thing to focus on framing. Often we over-constrain the scope of decisions when we'd be better off taking a broader view, and the reverse can also be true. It can sometimes be worth talking widely to stakeholders, understanding the issues, getting agreement about what the decision is supposed to deliver. Here's a silly example. This is real for me. You know, a debate about whether our decision should be about buying a new family car or a sports car. Okay, which of those three is the right decision statement, the way in which you frame that does make a big difference. And to get to a shared agreement about what decisions are about requires you to ask two relatively simple questions. Where did the need for this decision come from? And what's the range or scope of allowable options? But you're going to need to take a lot of soundings on that. Because if you can't get agreement about what the decision is about, you're not going to get agreement to the solution. So it's worth spending an extended bit of time at the beginning to do this. And often we come at decisions a little bit late, and we come at them trying to change somebody's mind. And actually that generally is too late. We need to be thinking about decisions that are coming at us in our working or personal lives and starting to go through the issues as those decisions come forward. And this is what I mean. There are 5 things that are worth talking about. And these will always help your decision-making team get some perspective, whether that's personal decision and you're talking about your home life, or whether it's a work decision you're talking about your team or your boss. As I said before, too often we start with discussing option A, B, or C and putting forward arguments for each. And this tends to lock people into their pre-existing bias. And that may not be at all influential. And given that you want to be influential, where you want to operate is before the options are all laid out on the table. So, 5 things to look at. The issues are clear. How did we get to this point that we need to choose something different, or maybe not something different? We understand the risks associated with keeping the existing process or symptom. We look at all the things that can go wrong with change, and also opportunities coming from doing whatever this thing is a bit differently. Now, given that this is KT, you won't be surprised that your contributions around this should be backed up with some data and should culminate in being able to agree, what is this decision about? And if you've got to that point, that's really useful. It might be useful to use post-it notes for this. Whatever format you choose to use, often graphical is better than text. So let's have a look at a little bit of an exercise. We're going back to that fictional Metaphoros company for a bit. And if you have a look into attachments now, and you open up the Module 6 case study, we're going to do an exercise now. So have a quick read of the text. It's only 1 page of A4, not very much text. Try to make notes in this structure. Try to identify information relating to these bubbles. What were the issues? What's the decision about? What are the risks relating to staying as we are? What are the risks relating to change? What are the opportunities from change? As you read through that, just work through making notes about that. And when you do, please send in a contribution and preface your contribution with, it's a decision, or it's a status quo, or it's a risk of change, or opportunity, or issue. Just put that at the beginning of your contribution. So identify which bubble you're working on. And if you're watching this and listening to this after the event and you're listening to the recording, please do have a go at the same exercise. You'll find it's kind of different. So you should put your ideas into questions. Whenever you read something that fits in one of those bubbles, please send me a note. coming through yet? All right, there we go. Yep, can't cope with increasing volume using manual methods. Yep. Risk of change, don't want to be liable for someone else's poor data. Yep. Good, any more? Okay, let those come in as they will, but let me just move forward. Yep, loss of high net worth individuals' personal data. Good, good. Let's go forward and have a look at what I got for this, and you may have a slightly different view, but nonetheless, this is all about creating a structure for sharing and creating a background for effective discussion of decisions, and particularly making sure that vital information is easily available and presentable to decision makers so that they take a balanced view. And this is a much more effective way of influencing folks than if you simply go, boss, we should do it this way because. So getting very similar things here. Decision about opportunities to use customers' bank. Yes, it could be that. Yep. So there we have a model answer. It's not necessarily a perfect answer, but once you've set the scene for the decision with all the stakeholders, it's always going to be much easier to develop clear requirements so that you can do a proper decision analysis. It's going to be much easier to assess different solutions. It's going to be much easier in the end to reach agreement. So as we come towards the end of this, I'm going to introduce you to the thing that we call homework, but of course you don't have to do it if you don't want. There's a book chapter here. I didn't want to go through the mechanical parts of decision analysis during this presentation. That's not what it's for. The book chapter gives you all the information you want there. And I'm going to suggest to you at the next meeting where your decision, any decision is discussed, print a copy of the 5-point diagram and just make notes around those bubbles. And think about how does the balance of discussion affect the meeting and the outcome? So I'm going to suggest that you want to have some good quality debate and contribution in each of those areas if you're going to get a balanced choice in the end. And if one of them's a little light, then you might well be able to, as an individual contributor, fill up that information for the benefit of the decision-making meeting. The other thing that you will find in the attachments is details and a link to e-learning. So we have an e-learning suite, which is lovely, and I encourage you all to sign up for it. But just for May, the decision analysis introduction module is available for free. And all you have to do is to sign up there and use that code CSDAF May 20, and you can have a go at that if you so wish. So there's the free stuff. And if you want even more detail than that, you will find at this URL lots of other KT classes that you might use to your benefit. Most of those are available at the moment virtually for obvious reasons, but they'll be going back to face-to-face as soon as lockdown is ended in your area. Thanks very much for coming along, and please let me know how you get on with the homework. Send me a note at the usual place, which is here, a.vermesh@Kepner-Tregoe.com, or via LinkedIn or Twitter, and tell me what's going on with your decisions. Thanks very much everybody for attending. Bye for now.